Hello there and welcome back to the Sound Alchemy podcast, the place where we talk about the grim darkness of the current era. When it comes to music production and music and being and the life of a musician in this crazy world of ours. Yeah. And today, the year of the Lord, 2025, we're going to be talking about the whole thing, or some of the recommendations and some of the stuff that should be in your head whenever you're hitting the studio for the first time. And if you happen to be a much more seasoned musician with some form of hours under your belt regarding recording, this could also be useful, because some of the stuff we're going to be discussing will be coming from my perspective as a professional music producer and mixing.
It's harder on many regards.
Yeah, because it requires you to be kind of on the spot, and there is only one chance to do it right.
Yeah, because you feel, okay, since the studio is a more controlled environment, is a place where you would have the chance to fail and redo it and everything like that, it would put less of a strain on you. And that's a very big misconception, because I actually think that the studio environment is less forgiving than the live one.
It is less forgiving because live you have plenty of opportunities, or if I put it in a different way, you have plenty of distractor factors. Mm-hmm. For example, the show itself, the dynamics between you and the band, and the audience as well, which kind of changes quite dramatically the importance of your performance when it comes to your proficiency on your instrument. Yeah. Because part of the show is the visual aspect.
Yeah.
And if people are having a blast, a mistake or two are not a problem. Yeah. But in the studio, they stick out like a sore thumb.
Yeah. Anything is gonna be very, very unforgivable.
Yes.
Because if it's what stays.
Yeah.
Because we're talking about what goes into the release of the album or the song or whatever we're talking about. That's what stays forever.
And it's not only the performance, it's also the tone and the sound recorded. Mm-hmm. There are many things that we'll be discussing, but good starting point. And actually, I sorry for taking a look at my phone, but the thing is that before going live, actually a friend of mine, he's asking, because he's going to be hired as a session musician, he plays the cello, and he's asking me how much should he charge. Great question, and I'm going to take from there.
Yeah.
What I'm going to tell him, you charge based on the amount of time you're going to spend in the recording process. So if you're going to spend a few hours or 2 hours or 1 hour, you will charge an accord. The thing is that you don't know. Mm-hmm. So you have to set a rate per hour, because what you're going to be offering is efficiency. You're going to be fast and precise. So if they want to spend more time with you, it's because they want you to do more. Make sense?
Makes sense.
So the rate, that's up to you. You have to make yourself competitive. Ask around if you are not aware of how much to charge for a session, but you are usually going to be charging per hour. Very important. So now, where would you begin with this conversation? Let's begin with tempo.
Yeah.
Because I think it's the first Achilles heel, right?
Yeah, it is indeed. And it's something that, once again, talking about something that may be a little bit more forgiving on certain scenarios and definitely not as forgiving within the studio. Yeah. Tempo is very much one of them. Of course, having good tempo is something that pertains every aspect of music making. That goes
part of being a musician.
On the stage, anywhere you go. But I think the requirement for precision and the requirement for steadiness on the studio is definitely harsher than on some other musical environments.
100%, because live, part of the sound is the excitement. And most bands don't play to a click track, because in reality nobody cares on the stage, because what matters is you delivering a good show, right? And even in the studio, you got examples such as Led Zeppelin. The first albums were recorded straight out of their own tempo, Bonzo's tempo.
Yeah.
But it shows that he was a very good drummer, because he has a very good steady tempo, and the rest of the band actually tracked to his tempo. And you can even hear, for example, the first one that comes to mind is Good Times, Bad Times. That's a very, very obvious display of how precise his tempo was, because the song begins with ta-na, tup, tup. You can hear him actually giving the cues to the rest of the band through the use of the hi-hats. So tempo is the first one. And perspective and my experience in the studio, being the lead, the producer, is the first problem you face, because the vast majority of people, they might be good on their instruments, but they have never played to a click. They are not familiar with the use of a metronome, right? So it's always the first struggle. And when you try to introduce the concept of metronome to a band that has never, or a musician who has never used it, it's always like a, a kind of a reckoning,
like an uphill battle.
an uphill battle, because the poor guy is not that he sucks. He simply doesn't have the experience with it, and it kind of puts them in a very rough spot, man.
And I also think it says a lot on how people learn music nowadays. Because honestly, working with the metronome should be a standard.
Mandatory.
When it comes to the learning of music, but it's more and more common for you to actually develop musical chops
without it.
Yeah, and that can become a very big problem later on.
Yes, and believe it or not, the biggest, the biggest, how can I put it? I'm trying to be polite. The biggest criminal in this regard is usually the drummers.
Yeah.
Because for whatever reason, and we had this discussion a few days ago, I don't know why, but drummers tend to focus mostly on the mechanical aspect rather than the theoretical aspect of music.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense to you as a drummer.
Yeah, and I think it has quite a lot to do with the essence of the instrument itself, because let's divide music in three very big pieces. There's melody, harmony, and rhythm. Okay,
those actually are the quintessential elements.
So drums are mostly about rhythm, not all, but most. And rhythm is the most primitive, the most fundamental of our connections with music.
Yes.
Because anybody can tap, anybody can bang something, and that's
something natural, right?
It's something that is very intrinsic.
It's intrinsic to your nature, yes.
So I think it's very easy to think that you understand rhythm when you don't.
Agreed.
Because you think that you have that kind of basic understanding just because of the very nature of it, but in reality, you basically not even putting your toes on the water. You have quite a lot more depth to rhythm than what you think you get just out of the box.
I agree, man. I agree. And the extra layers of proficiency that you can develop as a drummer comes from studying actual musical theory.
Yeah.
In this case, solfege, which is the rhythm element of music, right? And the theoretical aspect of music when it comes to rhythm. And by learning those techniques or those theoretical aspects, you start to develop way better rhythms, first and foremost. You start to develop better groups.
Yeah.
Because now you're following not a tempo, but you understand the structure. You understand the role of the different sections of your drum kit as a musician.
That's something that I think is an important, not a disclaimer, but just something to keep in mind. Because whenever there's a conversation about theory, it's very common to see someone raising the argument that whoever a musician was great without needing music theory. And I think you mentioned something that is a very important thing to keep in mind, which is music understanding. Because you can understand music through other mediums than studying music theory.
Agreed.
Because it's probably the longer route, but you can.
Yes.
Studying music theory is simply the most effective path to reach music understanding.
Yeah, and I have mentioned this story before, but I had the chance to attend to a Frank Gambale's clinic. Fantastic guitar player, one of my favorites ever. And the obvious question, how do you get good? And
there's always going to be somebody asking.
That guy is always there asking those questions, right? And Frank's answer was easy. Okay, do you know music theory? No. And the next question, when do I have to start learning? He said, as soon as you can. But would you begin should you start learning music theory at the beginning? No. First learn by yourself and get as far as you can by your own chops, so you can develop first your own voice. And then you will reach a zenith, which happens to everybody. And I think in guitar is super obvious when you reach it, man, because you start to just play the same licks. And also your chord progressions are always the same, so you start to sound punk. So, no, but it is, man. It is. No, think about it. I'm trying to be disrespectful, but the thing is that punk music tends to be very, not formulaic, because it is not, but it's simplistic, it's minimalistic on its approach, and it works by that very definition. I'm just simply saying that if you are you're aspiring to play more complex music, you start to find yourself in the corner, right?
Yeah.
And his suggestion was, okay, once you develop your own voice, learn music theory, because that's gonna take you outside of that cycle of repetition.
Yeah.
Very good piece of advice. And I think in the case of drummers, I think it should be the other way around, because you need the foundation, not of pitch and harmony, but a rhythm.
Yeah. But look, I think once again, since rhythm is the easiest part of music to fool yourself that you know, I think getting a little bit of hands-on with the drum kit and understanding the sounds, understanding how a drum kit fits within an ensemble, for instance, before you dive into the realm of music theory, might actually be for the best. But it's still, when to introduce it? Very soon.
As you can.
Very soon. Because I think drumming, well, I think that's probably replicated on every instrument, but you do develop quite a lot of vices. And to get rid of those later on, when you never paid attention to them, they are already ingrained in the way that you play.
And they only show when you record.
Yeah, they only show when you record, and now you need to get rid of them. That can be very problematic. It can be done, but it's very tough.
It is indeed. So when it comes to your experience recording, what would be the first, your first reaction? Tell us a little bit about your first time.
Look, I feel that
was it gentle?
Nah.
It was rough, right?
No. I don't think recording is gentle. Once again, even though you feel that it's a more controlled environment, I actually think that the tension and the pressure of the situation is higher than you would expect.
It is indeed, because there is no energy.
Yeah.
It's you and your lack of talent. And that's it.
Look, this thing about, for instance, let's say you're used to play to a crowd. You're used to be on stage, but you never hit the recording studio.
Let's say you pick your quintessential covers band.
Yeah, for you to perform without getting that feedback from the audience, or even having other people playing with you, because music in the studio is a very individual activity.
It is, man.
But music, usually music outside of the studio is very synergic. It's something that you have other
the chemistry, right?
Yes, and that chemistry, even though is one of the beauties of music, is it can be once again very forgiving. Because when you're playing within an ensemble, say a trio, 3 people playing, they are adapting to each other's tempo on the spot.
And fixing each other's mistakes.
Yeah, so you don't feel it.
Which is a completely different skill that you should develop.
Yes.
But it only works and it only serves its purpose when you're doing live shows.
Yeah.
If you're not playing live, those skills do nothing.
Yeah.
Actually are kind of counter what you should be doing on the studio.
They are indeed. And now when it comes to the whole dynamics of the moment of performing, right, either in front of the audience or the studio, if you're in the studio, you're gonna miss that. You're gonna miss that synergy. You're gonna miss that kind of a responsive element that it happens when music is being done by more than one people.
So would you say that you would suggest first to learn to differentiate what should be done on the stage from what should be done in the studio?
No.
Learning to feel the differences between the two activities?
No, what I think I would suggest, I think this is something that should be a recommendation to any musician, now talking to drummers, because I'm a drummer, but anyone, is finding ways to record yourself even when you're not recording. Because if your first instance of recording yourself is whenever you're hitting the studio to actually record something meaningful,
which is going to be critically analyzed,
that you're gonna suffer. Oof. You are gonna suffer.
Good point. And you can do it with your phone.
Nowadays we have plenty of tools to make this happen.
Anymore. Yes, agreed. Now I would recommend. I ask you that question because sometimes you realize when you're producing somebody that they kind of shy away because the circumstances, that chemistry that you refer to, and that emotional interaction or that emotional exchange that happens between you, the performer, and the audience is totally missing in the studio. It's so controlled, it's quiet, it's just you, the headphones, and wherever click track you got. If you're lucky, you have some form of backing tracks. I will recommend you to do that. I want to explain that later. But it helps a lot for drummers in particular. Drummers kind of go insecure. They become cramped, right? Because something is missing. The same happens, and it's very similar to singers as well. It's because those instruments, since you only do or practice them full force, when you are kind of in this controlled environment, you feel timid. Get me? It's the only way that I can describe it. Once we hit the singing stage, you'll see why the correlation is so big. But as drummers, I always try to make them feel that they are in front of an audience. Through conversation, trying to remove them, trying to take them out of the studio, mentally speaking. Because otherwise they're super timid. They might be playing correctly, but
it
feels stiff. Particularly on the field, you start dude, that sounds. You play the notes, but there is no swing. There is no music, right?
And that flowy performance is way easier to achieve when you're interacting with an audience and interacting with a band than when you're interacting with a click.
Totally, because you're enjoying what you're doing. And even if you are, let's say, let me bring in the whole thing with the backing tracks. one trick that I learned, and it has proven to be very effective, and it became part of my my work ethic or methodology for recording events. It's before I hit the drums, I like to record a full draft of the instruments, not necessarily the cleanest of takes, but one that is the mistakes are forgettable or forgivable, for the drummer to feel the closest possible to being in the rehearsal room or on the stage. That way I can control, give me more bass, more vocals, because some drummers like to follow the vocals, some others the guitar, some others the bass, some don't follow anything, and there are those commandos that goes full on a click. That should be the way, by the way, but those are rare and far in between, and usually those guys will ask for a little bit of the juice just to feel it, right? Because usually when I have the fortune of working with drummers like that, they go the first round just to get familiar with the sound coming through the headphones, blah blah blah, because they know the song by their own. They are not following. That's the trick, and that's something I recommend you if you're a drummer. Learn the track. Don't follow the instruments. Please do that. Live makes sense because you're actually kind of catching up with the sound of everybody, right? But in the studio, you're the first one to record usually. It's by force because everybody's going to follow to your tempo and your swing. So the drummer, please learn the track and be able to play the whole thing, do the click without backing tracks. Once you do that, after those guys went through the whole song just with the click alone, okay, do you want me to send some stuff? Yes, I usually send the full mix, but already kind of organized. Okay, I get it. I feel it, and they start to play better, because now they're musically driven, right? But then they will ask you, okay, give me more bass. Let's do this. Oh, that's okay. That's a monitor mix. That's a completely different thing, but that's the correct way to do it. If you are not experienced, well, you should get a Jimi Hendrix record, but also you should. I recommend you to start off with the full mix. And ask for different points, the references points that you got, because the sooner you get to that particular comfort zone, that is I feel like I'm playing with my band, rather than I feel that I'm inside of a room, surrounded by microphones. There's a guy looking at me with a mean attitude,
and he's not happy.
He's not happy. I can clearly see he's disappointed, and I'm already ready to do it again. If you're producing and you've managed to take them out of that mindset, great recording. And also it's going to be faster, because the less time you spend redoing stuff, I'm going to put it this way. When you're recording, and you can give me your opinion as well as somebody who's been the guy recording, okay? Being recorded. Every time that you go through a run, every time, it's not that you're giving a better take. You know that you did something wrong. It's not working. And that starts to add a little bit of fatigue, mental and emotional fatigue on you. Plus the physical fatigue that comes from performing, right?
Becoming actually tired.
You start to get tired. So you should, as a producer, try to push them quickly enough to the hot spot, so they can deliver their best performance as quickly as possible, because the morale is what matters. If the morale is low, the ranks are going to start to disperse, and it's going to go to shit, man. Clearly. So, what do you think about that? Let me check the comment.
Okay. Look, I feel that mindset does play a very big role when it comes to this. The thing is, if you're not used to pressure from before hitting the studio, you're gonna crumble under the pressure of the studio. So I think the solution to this issue should come from before. I think once again, the whole thing about recording yourself, it comes with an addendum when it comes to mentality, which is analyzing yourself critically, because if critical judgment to your playing is gonna happen on a serious recording, once again you're screwed. So you should be judging yourself under those conditions way before hitting the studio.
And under circumstances that allows you to don't feel ashamed.
Exactly. So you should already be harsh with your own criticism, but on your own recordings, but recordings that are not necessarily going anywhere. It's just you practicing and developing the mentality that's gonna allow you not to crumble when you hit the studio.
100%. And here's Joss. Hey, Joss.
Hey, man.
Have you here? He's saying in the Pro Studio, you are playing for time, so you can't afford to mess up. Time is money, and you want to avoid mistakes. Nervousness or freezing up always happens before that red light goes on. 100%, man. It's exactly what I'm trying to avoid. I'm trying to tell you the techniques, or show you some of the techniques that I have developed to avoid that from happening. Because if you go there expecting this not to happen, you're cooked.
Yeah.
You truly need to be aware that this is something that will happen. It's part of nature. Because even a seasoned musician who has plenty of hours of studio time will be not necessarily comfortable during the first runs.
Yeah.
Because the sound is not right, or simply you feel that, wait a second, even my monitoring could be incorrect, or I'm kind of stiff, I need a better position to sit in the case of a guitar player. There are many factors, and everybody will have those moments. And if you as a producer are not aware and trying to make sure that your musicians are feeling in the zone, the whole production is going to go to hell.
Yeah,
exactly. So, by the way, just now that I got you here, I will take on the tracks that you sent me later today. Okay, I've been quite busy. You don't know how much. And I actually, for example, today I had a reamping session. I will dive a little bit more into it because that's guitar player related. But let's finish off with the drums.
Okay.
Tuning. God damn!
That's actually something that not enough drummers give the credit to that skill that it deserves.
Because they don't know theory.
The thing is that, look, and if I saw a lesson by who was it?
While you remember, I'm going to ask you, people in the audience, please share with us if you have ever met a drummer who actually cares for the tuning of the kit. I have met some, but I have worked with a good chunk.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Look, one of the biggest issues related to tuning a drum kit, or the skill of knowing how to tune a drum kit, okay, which is something that most drummers don't have. And why don't they have it? Because on the most part, drummers just tune their heads when they are changing them.
Yeah.
It's just that they never actually practiced, they never actually went through it just because they want to get a proper sound. It's just because they are swapping heads, and they need it to work.
And they don't necessarily speaking tune them.
Yeah.
They just
getting them kind of there.
It's less bad.
Yeah. So I can't remember who was it, but I saw a lesson by a very good drummer.
Steve Smith, could it be?
I'm not sure. I don't think it was.
Or Simon Phillips?
But it's
one of those guys,
Simon
right?
Phillips is one of the best sounding drummers ever.
Yeah.
But look,
he's a nerd.
But he's treating drum sound as a skill, which it is.
It is.
So, and you don't even need like to put as many hours in training that as you would on the drumming itself. But let's say you dedicate one day, but okay, today I'm gonna spend like 5 hours
just
tuning and detuning my kit, getting the best sound possible, understanding the tension, understanding, okay, if I go a tiny bit more, it rings. If I go a little bit less, it's mute.
Exactly. Learning to detect the freaking resonance points for each of your heads in accordance to the shells that you're using.
Yeah.
That's the most important element of a drum kit. Because even though you might be working with the best sounding kit possible in a highly doctored room, so the acoustics are right, there will be points on which you will have some resonances. Yeah. Some of them are useful, some of them are awful, and microphones will enhance wherever you throw at them. Yeah. That's a fact. So it's very important for you as a drummer, please spend time, as Thiago put it. One day, instead of practicing, develop the hearing, because you will, it's the same as with a guitar. If you're slightly out of tune, it's going to sound bad once the rest of the band kicks in. If you're sharp, it's going to sound correct. And and if you want to go the extra mile, but this is big box productions, you should even be able to tune your drum kit to the key of the track. Because it does make a difference. And look, when I am producing electronic music, I am that guy that actually tunes the kick drum. Okay? I do. It works. It makes music sound more punchier. It's nerdy shit. It is indeed. And it's too much? Maybe. But change.
But it delivers.
It delivers. Let me show its comment.
No, while you read the comment. the whole thing about treating it as a skill is because there's no one sound to rule them all.
No.
Because okay, I learned how to get my kids to a sound where you have quite a lot of resonance, and let's say you like that sound. It doesn't mean that sound's gonna work for every production.
Exactly.
Some production you're gonna need something a little bit more muted, something a little bit that rings a little bit more, something a little bit more high pitch or less or lower pitch.
Yeah, it's not about the quality of the drums. Those plays a huge role, of course, but come on, man.
Yeah, so it is to be treated as a skill. You need to not only to know how to get it to that sound, but how to get the sound that you need for that particular production.
Yeah, I hear you just saying that tuning drums is a rare gift. Very few drummers do that. Yeah, it's rare.
Yeah.
I have met some, but I will not name how many. So yeah, moving to another instrument.
Yeah.
More common one, keyboards. What do you need to know? Just don't fry the freaking way. Basically speaking is that, man, because keyboards, usually synthesizers in particular, well, first and foremost, analog or digital. If you're working with analog, tune it. Tune it. Because those guys go out of tune just by looking at them. That's normal, man.
Yeah.
But just make sure that it's tuned.
And it's part of their charm.
It's part of their charm.
Yeah.
How do you do it? Like you would with a guitar. Get a pedal, or if you're going DI into your interface, insert a plugin, a tuning plugin, and do it in a stereo if you're working with a stereo synthesizer. Now, if you're working with a digital one, just make sure that you're not going way too hot. But don't do it wimpy as well. Just send the right amount. Let the engineer or the man who is manning the and controlling the preamps set the final stages. My recommendation, if you have from 0 to 100 in the output of your keyboard, put it like 80 as the starting point. That way you will give some headroom in case you need to push without adding extra noise. And also always use a DI box, please. Why? Ground issues. Do you like those? I, for one, hate them with a passion.
It's not like we're dealing with that like a few minutes ago.
Yeah, it's not that we had to do ground lifts everywhere. Yeah, you do need that. So don't go straight. Just get a freaking DI box, a stereo one. And that also will be useful for you if you go live. Because that will allow you to use actual extra outputs that can be sent all the way up to 60 meters from you. Beautiful, right?
Beautiful.
And the ground lift removes any form of ground loops that are created by connecting the stuff into your interface. Because the computer, it could be your hard drive, and I think in this case my hard drive is way too freaking noisy. And because I can't even hear that it's in the same pitch, the ground loop, as the sound of the hard drive working. Again, this is a very controlled room, and I'm already there. So you can imagine how much I enjoy walking around the world, right? So everything sounds like ass, but wherever. That would be it for keyboards. Guitar player, bass first. Don't try to overcompensate in volume. And I will recommend you this. When tracking, I like to always push the instrument that I'm recording in question a little bit louder, because that allows me as a producer to hear all of the nuances, but not for that much. Just for a while, just to make sure, okay, it sounds like this. Back it off, see how it feels within the mix, and then I will do any correction in accord to what I heard. Why? You are recording to the mix, not mixing for the recording. Does that make sense?
Makes sense. Yes.
Because if you have seen some of the productions in the other channel, we got the live streams on which I'm producing music. One of my goals is always to get as close as possible to a mixed sound while producing. What do we mean by that? In the case of bass, this morning I actually was reamping bass to a track that actually finally we're making music. And it's a track that we are working on. And we recorded, of course, first the drums, and then I crafted the bass tone. It worked, right?
Yeah.
It already does this with your hair. Why? Because the tone I got out of the bass rig, it's already working in tandem with the kick drum we're using for that particular production. And also, when producing your track, when writing the piece, bass players, please don't try to be flashy. I get you, but please understand your role. You're playing alongside the kick, and that applies to the drummers as well. Don't try to Marco Miniman your way around the whole freaking every second you got. There is something called symmetry that is actually very musical, and drummers tends to avoid that one. And in the case of bass players, I don't give a damn. Look at me. Bass run after bass run, full lick after lick. Dude, have you heard of groove? Because that's what actually your main role. And a good composition will allow for the bass to shine and the drums to shine
within the respective roles,
and also in the right moment for them to shine. Why? Unless your song is led by the drums, the drums should be the thing attracting attention. If you got a singer, it's gonna be usually the singer. If you got a guitar player playing leads or a synthesizer playing leads, it's gonna be those guys. Because even Nathanist, that guy, great bass player, one of the best ever. He's probably, I think, is the most recorded bass player in history. It is.
Yeah,
he has played with everybody, and he's been the official bass player for Eric Clapton. I don't know, probably 2 decades or 3. At this stage, I think probably 4. I don't know.
Yeah,
he's been around
for way too long.
Yeah, he got recognition in the mainstream by his role playing with Daft Punk in that good record, the only one.
Yeah,
that
is a very good record.
It's excellent, and I love it.
Random Access Memories.
Yeah, Ram. It's a very good album. But whatever. He has 2 albums that he produced by himself, for himself as a solo artist, in which the bass is actually the lead. And how does he do it? He has another bass. So he recorded a bass playing the groove and another bass playing the leads. That's how, man.
Yeah.
Because his approach to that was, okay, if I go full on Jacob Astorius, what's going to happen to the low end of the group?
Yeah.
Well, hello. So, and Jacob Astorius can get away with it because he knew when.
And he can get away with it at times.
Because
at times
sometimes a bit too much, man. But he's one of the very few rare cases on which the bass player shines. Another good example, Victor Wooten.
Yeah.
God damn, that guy's also great.
Yeah.
But again, playing it riskily.
Yeah.
Because they get too close to the sun, right?
The thing is that once again, the understanding of music theory comes into play because Victor Wooten is one of the most knowledgeable musicians.
Oh man, he is. If I could pick musicians right now that I could consider them being very proficient in music theory, Victor Wooten comes to mind.
Yeah.
Andy Timmons, and also Jordan Rudess.
Oh, and Herbert Hancock.
Herbert Hancock. Yeah, Herbert Hancock. Yeah, as well. Yeah. Okay, Joseph here saying, I once had to record a singer, but he needed to get high in order to get his vocals being there, loose, and be able to scream after a while. After a while, he was crashing into the walls, instruments, but he couldn't sing it sober. In my experience, man, I also dealt with my fair share of those guys. In my experience, you start to realize it's an excuse. You don't need it, man. Because who is in control over your body? You or whatever substance you needed to have beforehand, right? A good singer should be able to produce the sounds. It could be, I'm not condoning, okay? I'm not condoning because in my book, I always have run my studios like Quincy Jones, because he used to say, according to legend, that the studio is like the church. You gotta go there sober and stay there sober. Why? Because you know when God's gonna appear, and if you're not there to appreciate it, he's gone. It's a good analogy, and actually he's referring to inspiration and the stroke of genius. So it's something that I totally never condone that. So I recommend you to be more focused on trying to facilitate comfort for your performer in a way that doesn't get in the way of the performance itself. According to legend, Lady Gaga, to record, I don't even remember which record, she needed to remove her clothes for tracking. And of course they put the drapes and stuff, right? Allegedly. But I would prefer you to promote something like that, because at least that's not gonna get them in a different state of mind. Get me?
Yeah.
affecting the performance, as the example that Josh shared with us. So yeah, that would be bass players. So please learn to play in tandem with your kick and your drummer, because both of you, drummers and bass players, are actually what makes a record sound professional. Be honestly, in all honesty, because without the solid foundation, the group, it doesn't matter if you got a great guitar player or a great singer. They're not playing to a song. Get me?
Yeah.
So yeah, now moving to the guitars, guys. For God's sake, use less gain. That's the first thing. Less gain, because you think that in order to be metal, you gotta crank it all the way down to 11. No, you never do that. Why? Your amplifier is gonna become unruly, and if you're playing heavy metal, your low end is gonna start to become fuzzy. And even if you put a tube screamer or wherever guitar pedal you're using to shape and sculpt the sound of your guitar before hitting the front end of your amp, you're gonna still be quite unruly, because you're exciting everything, man. And also the noise floor goes to the roof, man. It's no longer it's roof noise, no longer noise. Yeah, totally awful. It's super loud, and even if using a gate could be needed on the amp. And if you will have to use a gate, because let's say you're playing something super heavy, like, I don't know, Gent, that relies quite a lot on kind of precise and controlled distortion. Not that much, mind you. But since they have plenty of those holes in between sections or notes, plenty of silences between notes, sometimes it's better to have a gate in the way in while recording than going there manually applying the cuts. Tedious and also not necessarily musical, because the guy will be trying to, it will be distracting for the musician. So what I recommend you to do, use a gate. The pedals are outside, but get a gate and use it in the loop. In the loop is better than in the front.
Why?
Because you're gonna be gating the preamp, not the guitar. And if you have a gate with four holes, like 4 holes, with an input, an output, and a send, a receive, and a send, like a loop, use it, plug the guitar into the input of the gate, then the send, the output of your send is going to be the one that goes into the amp. The loop is going to be the like that, right? I'm going to look. It's difficult to explain while talking. I'm going to post in the community tab the diagram, because believe me, that's the best way for you to apply a gate. I used to have one in my library like that, like a charm, man, because it's using the guitar as the way to dictate when to open the gate rather than the noise, rather than the amplified sound. So the decay is going to be better, it's going to be less choppy, and will allow you to have a much precise recording. Of course, that's only in the case of you having to deal with a very, very gainy amp. Most of the time, I wouldn't recommend using a gate while tracking.
Look, one thing, because you're kind of already going into assumption that the guitar player in question is aware or has a good understanding of gain staging. Don't you think that's probably...
That's why I said that the first thing, less gain, man. Less gain.
But the whole notion of gain staging, I think, is something that a guitar player going to the studio for their first time might be prompted with that concept actually for the very first time if he didn't develop that understanding beforehand.
Look, in that note, Joss is saying that he heard that Eddie Van Halen never used a distortion pedal, and I think you're correct, because I am a sucker for his tone. Fantastic. Actually, a good chunk of the way that my guitar sounds like is inspired by him, because I love that high gain sound. I think you're correct, Joss, because he's the woman sound, if I recall. No, that's Eric Clapton's. It's the Brown sound. Brown sound is basically just coming out of his super modified Marshall. It was a Plexi or I don't know. Just remind me that one. And later a 5150 amplifier, which is renowned for being super high gainy. And less noise. I'm not gonna dive down into the whole rabbit hole that is amplifiers, design and architecture, but this shows you a great understanding of what signal of a signal path and gain staging. Because Eddie's a great example, and I think he was always going straight into the amp because the amp was basically cranked up to 20, not 11. So imagine how loud it was.
Yeah.
But so beautiful. What a great tone that is, right? In my case, I recommend you to use different stages of gain, little increments in the way into your amplifier, so you can develop a more controlled tone. Not everybody has access to a huge gigantic head that would deliver that massive tone like a 5150. And even if you're working in the box using Tonex, for example, just because I have one in front of me, the same principles apply. Because also one thing you have to consider when tracking, everything that you're recording is being summed up in the stereo bus, which is what you actually will output, is what you hear as the final record. So what happens if you put too much distortion? You're gonna feel the space in between the instruments, and you're gonna start to make everything feel cramped in. Why? Many reasons. I'm not gonna explain why, because there are many things happening at that point. But try to be concise, because, for example, think of a band like I know, Megadeth. Right? Very heavy, but it's not overly distorted. It's controlled. It's tight sounding, and that's coming from probably an equalizer in the way into the guitar amplifier, the proper guitar and cabinet speaker, the right use of microphones. Because believe it or not, I would even dare to say that in order to get a good tone, maybe 60 or 70% of what you hear in a record is the cabinet and the microphones over the head. Because a microphone, you have seen it. You move it slightly, damn, it's a completely different ballpark. So it's more about that. So be mindful of that. And when you're recording as a guitar player, I will recommend you to get there with the tone halfway through. Then get into the room and adapt the tone to the way the room is interacting with your sound. Because if you have done it before, if you have performed live before, you know that the sound is never the same. Because the acoustics are different, right? So you're going to try to accommodate for those acoustics. So what I recommend you already have your trademark sound. You get to the studio, you get to the live room, get some form of protection or don't go ballistics, and adjust the tone of your amplifier to taste, just to make sure that it sounds the way you have in your head. Then get out and let the engineer get the tone through the head, through the microphones. It's not going to be exactly the same, because what you hear in your head is different from what the microphone perceives. And another thing, less low end on your amp. Please do that. Again, you're recording to a fully mixed track at the end. Everything's going to be summed up in the master bus. If you got plenty of low end, you're going to be fighting with the kick and the bass, isn't it? And even synthesizers, if you're using a very dense mix. Think of something like, I don't know, Dream Theater, a prog rock thing, or something complex like Peter Gabriel with tons of layers and stuff. Porcupine Tree, Radiohead, all of those bands. You're already fighting for all sorts of spaces in the frequency range. If you, let me, because in my room sounds very ballsy. Dude, nobody has heard your guitar in your room. And also, when you do that, you're by yourself. So you're trying to compensate for the lack of bass and kick. So please, less gain and less low end. God damn.
Quick question. Because you got into the realm of microphoning and all of that. How much, because even though the musician, let's say the musician is working with the producer, it's not self-produced, how much do you think the musician needs to understand of the production side of things to be able to deliver well on the musician side of things?
Good point, and actually great question. I was thinking on using that particular point to finish the discussion, but you bring it earlier, but it's better. It's better this way, because it's organic. I think nowadays there is no excuse for a musician to not know enough of what involves what involves making a record. I don't know if that makes sense. Why? Because you have access to internet. You are right now watching us and see how many things we're discussing with you and sharing with you. So you should, as a musician, by now force to have a good understanding of the mechanics of the mechanics involved in making a record. Okay,
yeah.
You don't have, and I strongly recommend you not to develop the skills of a mixing engineer. Why? That's a career path. It's going to take you much more time than you need to do, because that time should be spent on developing your skills and honing your skills, right? The same applies to production. The thing is this: if you're serious about writing your own stuff, you're serious about producing your own music, I recommend you to begin diving into the world of music production. That's different, because those skills are the ones that will allow you to make conscious decisions while writing a new piece. You're going to start to develop interaction between the instruments. You're going to make the life of the recording engineer easier, and also the mixing engineer easier as well.
Yeah.
Because if you become good at arranging, which is a good chunk of what a music producer does, your end result will be that good that instead of the mixing engineer to focus on fixing mistakes and making it work together, is going to focus on making the track sound badass.
Yeah, beautifying and
enhancing and actually having fun.
Yeah.
But that comes from learning the many interactions. Plenty of music theories involved. The interactions between frequencies, the textures between instruments, the emotional connotation that those instruments have, and how they could interact with each other. A good example that comes to mind: let's say that you're going to be what makes a good sounding heavy section sound heavy? The cymbals being in accord to the sound of the guitars. Because the guitars are already covering a little bit of that spectrum.
Yeah.
We're talking about like 5K to 10K hertz, depending on the tuning of the cymbals and the tone of the guitar as well. You would be, if you balance that correctly, the guitars and the cymbals are gonna start to create this beautiful interaction.
Yeah.
And if the bass and the kick drum are properly placed and they are working together, you start to sound like Metallica.
Yeah.
No joke.
Yeah.
That's what makes a professional band sound professional, man. Is that understanding?
Yeah.
And that's the route that I would strongly recommend you to follow, rather than learning how to mix music. But get a little bit of understanding of how it's done. Like, at least get in your head this thing. Microphones doesn't listen to the same way to music as we do. They have a particular tone to them. Microphone preamps are a thing, and they play a huge role because some of them have character. The interfaces don't have character, so they are boring. That's why you see plenty of super expensive preamps that this is the Celine Dion, blah 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 blah, that kind of crap. Why? Because that's where the module is.
Yeah.
You can make the argument, I can hear it now. And it's not that you will, I convinced myself that there is something. No, it's not a snake oil. You need to hone the skills to actually detect the differences.
Yeah.
Cabinets, speakers, in the case of guitar players, everything plays a role, because what I'm trying to explain to you is that you have to see this as a series of different stages with different elements that interact with each other, and the order could or could not affect the end result. As that.
Yeah, just has a commentary.
Yes. I once saw a jazz concert, badass band.
Yeah.
They had no amps. It was surround sound with speakers all around them. Like, all instruments were plugged into a mixer and out to speakers. They don't know how they did it. Look, depends on when that concert was recorded, because nowadays, just for example, my library, I use no amps on station. I go straight into the board. I think you can show them that. Yeah, can you give me that one? Yeah, so sorry, we got a mess because I had a huge reamping session today. That bad boy. Yes, please give it to me. This is right now my mini board. This is my studio board, but also I use it for live shows as well. Whenever I have to hit the stage with not that much of a gear. Yeah. This is Tonex. This guy here. This is my amplifier, and this pedal is my cabinet. Thank you, very much. This is my amplifier, and this is my cabinet. This is Tonex. It's a modeler. It's a capture device rather than a modeler. And Tonex, it's creating the sound of my amp. And this is the aux pedal. This is creating the sound of the cabinet. The output of Tonix, without having to go super nitty-gritty, is hitting the micro pitch. This guy here, which does many things. I'm not gonna spend time on it, but it's awesome. From here, it goes into the Tonix, into the aux amp. I am replicating the effects loop section somewhat, not the same because this is not effects. This is not in between the amp and the preamp and the power amp of the emulation. But from here, it goes into a canvas. I don't know. Yeah, that guy, the black, that one. Thank you, Tero. That guy. That's a DI box, which goes out here. That's how you do it. It's built-in Gigging Gear, all built-in in Gigging Gear. Yes, man. Look, we have come a long way from the days of old in which you needed huge amps. And I'm looking at this because I have here a wall of amps to perform live. These guys, Tonix, is basically it's a mini computer running the software that recreates the tone of the amplifier. And in here I can store 127 patches, which means 127 sounds based on the amplifiers that I take snapshots of.
Which should be enough.
Which should be enough for basically everybody.
Yeah.
So, and Tonix, this guy right now have access to effects, built-in effects. Very simple, not insanely powerful, but good. Good enough for jazz. And this guy, the cabinet here, it's amazing. Amazing. Tonix is capable of also producing the cabinet sound by its own. It's using something called IR, known as IRs. An IR is in simple terms, impulse response is what it means, and it's like a photograph of the sound of the cabinet running through a particular microphone and blah blah blah. Okay, and it sounds very good because you can install your own. But everybody is doing that, and I don't like to be like everybody, so I got the aux box, which it specializes itself in just producing the sound of the cabinet.
With some control over.
With huge control, because you can actually move the microphones, you can actually balance the microphone's position, you can turn the sound into stereo or mono depending on the patch. You can have up to 6 patches on the board, and you control it to your phone. You use the Bluetooth to control the cabinets, and you start to move them around. It's insane, man. It's insane. And the sound is huge. No, man.
It's fantastic.
Knocks the ball out of the park every freaking day. So this board, as tiny as it is basically covering everything.
Yeah.
It does everything.
Yeah.
For real. And allows me to connect my guitar sound through the use of a DI box all the way down to wherever the mix is. The mixer is because XLR balanced outputs allows you to go as far as 60 meters without any form of loss of audio quality, plus the added benefit of a freaking ground loop.
Yeah.
Which we know a thing or two about those, right? So fantastic. Let me check this. That's small. Or your setup is there partially. Let me show you my little friend.
Yeah. So
it's right. It's kind of here.
Yeah. Will it stay?
Yeah. Just keep it there.
Is it secure?
It should be.
Okay.
Give a sec.
So we're about to say hello to your little friend then.
Yes, we are. Let me put stuff. It's getting away.
Did you unhook it from the system now?
It was unhooked.
Okay, well, because we're gonna go back to it afterwards.
I will, yes. Okay, this is my little friend. Now we're talking, right?
Yeah.
This is
spot racing.
the spot racing. This is, damn it. This is actually my main board. This is the one that I actually use to play the full sets. But also, I've been using it right now for a studio because we're tracking music again and we're producing music again. As incredible as that sounds. This thing is insane, and it's using, look, Tonix again. Oh no, there's not. Tonix again, because I was looking at the camera.
Yeah.
Tonix again, but this is the mini version. It does the same as the big one, but it only can store 2 amps at a time, switchable. So I use my Tonix as clean, dirty channels, because this guy allows you to recreate and take a snapshot of your own amps. And having the amps that I have got here, doing this dubious job, I actually developed my own captures, and it sounds badass. And a quick rundown. This is kind of I'm not gonna spend time because this is actually a wet, dry, wet setup. I actually need three connections.
Because I want to go fancy.
Yeah, because this guy is actually doing the studio thing. This is badass. It's very good sounding, but a little bit complex.
I'll get this guy out.
Please do.
I'm convinced.
So right now, what it does is pedal tuner. From the tuner, I go into my H90. From the H90, I go into my H9. Both Eventide, fantastic pedals. These guys are actually controlled by MIDI. So this guy switches the channels, switches the effect on both units at the same time. From here, I hit my Tumnus, which is my kind of clone center effect, and this guy I use it as a clean boost. It's transparent boost. I know buzzwords, but whatever. But I use it to push a little bit the input of my signal. Oh, sorry, it's not the first one. The first one in the chain is the here.
They said, yeah, I think they can.
Yeah, the compressor somewhere. And also you got my cabinets here. This guy. Those are my cabinets, doing something similar to the other guy, and they act as my what's the name? DIs as well. So from there I go into my Tumnus, which is my first gain stage. Then I hit my flanger here, which is the Polychrome by Walrus Audio. This guy is so good.
Yeah.
And then my fuzz, the Hissimitas by Earthquaker Devices. Then obviously Tube Screamer, because obviously, and then the amp. But there's more, because I actually split the signal, because from H990 we go into from H9 we actually are outputting from Tonex. Sorry, Tonex actually has a stereo output. One output goes DI is the first output, which is the dry signal, and the second one goes into the loopback of my H9, which is then in turn sent into the second input of the H90, and from the H90 I output
the stereo signal.
Yeah. And this is fully affected. It's basically doing the stereo studio stuff.
Yeah. So wet, dry, wet, live.
Wet, dry, wet, live. You like Van Halen? He rigged his own guitars. Yeah, I actually rigged my own guitars daily. I even learned a little bit of Luther thing. I don't know how many times have you seen me polishing.
Filing.
There is the Luther.
Yeah, the bag here.
I have my tools there to fix some of my guitars, and yeah, it looks expensive. I'm not gonna tell you that it's not. It's not cheap, but it's far from stupidly expensive. Once you start to see what this bad boy is capable of doing, because it allows me to change positions. These guys could be here in the front or the back or wherever. Many things. The routing is kinda insane. Great sounding board. The music that we're producing now features this guy, and you're gonna be stressed. Actually, guitar tone is very badass.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's story for another day. That would be for the live recommendation. Oh, and one thing, I have expression pedal and a volume pedal that I have by the side. The expression can do many things. For example, I can turn this guy into a wah in one patch, and the next one is controlling the amount of effect in and out in both units at the same time or independently, and the volume pedal allows me to control the dry signal.
Quick question. Kind of hanging on to this tangent that was created.
the nerdy stuff.
Because look, I think that a lot of guitar players think that the final guitar sound is the job of the producer and the mixing engineer.
Good point, man.
Rather than coming with a ready sound in mind.
Yeah.
How much do you think the guitar player, the musician, should be in control of the final sound, or should have the vision for the final sound?
Look, today's reamping sound, I recorded most of what I did to video, because I'm going to be making videos explaining the whole process. One of the things that I will be showcasing is why it's important for, in my opinion, to commit to sounds while tracking. Because nowadays it became super popular to just record DI and turn the song into something else later.
Yeah.
Boring and a huge mistake. Yeah. Why? You're ignoring the production side of things. It's exactly what I was trying to emphasize a lot in a few minutes ago. Because if you commit to the sounds, it forces you to make sure that the sounds are already working in the mix.
Yeah.
If you have in your head, because I used to do it that way before, when I began doing this, in mind this part with delay, yeah, it's gonna sound awesome, allegedly, and then you hit the mixing stage like, it sounds like gas. I should. What was I thinking? And that only means one thing. You know what? Let's redo the take. And now that's on you, because you were the lead for the project. So yeah, we'll do it later. So yeah, so you have to do that for free. Not a good plan, man.
Yeah.
Because that's a loss. So and you won't believe the. Well, you would believe me. Some of those jobs I actually end up losing money. Why? Being stupid. And another reason why I became such an adept to committing to sounds and effects. Back in the day, they didn't have the same amount of flexibility that we have today.
Yeah.
And don't you find funny that everybody's always lusting over the sound of those old records? And what's the most common denominator when it comes to describing the sound of modern music? It sucks.
Yeah.
Nobody likes it. Yeah. Have you ever heard somebody like, man, this new album sounds... It's always Asia, Eye in the Sky, freaking ABC, Black Album, all those freaking old...
Usual suspects.
Yeah, old as balls albums. Why? They commit to everything. Why? Because they didn't have the same amount of flexibility as we do today.
Yeah.
And you can mix, but some elements are added in the mixing process. Of course, man. Yeah. But the core of the sound should be there. That way, the mixing engineer, instead of, let me see if this works, because also I have done some mixes on which they live to my own interpretation, the use of effects. How can I know if what I'm doing is going to be accepted by you, the musician, if the musician himself has no idea?
Because the vision allegedly
is yours.
Yeah.
And when I'm mixing for somebody else, I always ask for, give me a freaking track that shows me the vision.
Yeah.
Is the draft or a rough mix. And super important, I always demand it. I will not mix anybody if they don't send me the freaking rough mix. Because... And also I have conversations with the production team or the musicians if they are the ones who are producing the record. Because otherwise, how can I know? I really like, this sounds good for me.
Yeah. But who knows if it aligns with the vision, the original vision?
Exactly, man. And another thing, when you're recording, if you start to use effects as part of the recording process, you start to learn that this is too much delay. Back it off then. Because if you make the sound of the effects sound correct while tracking, you can be assured that it's gonna sound amazing while mixing. Is it harder? Way harder. Is it risky? Super risky. Because you only got one chance to do it right. Is it right or it sucks? And it's not because we are running out of tape. No. The thing is that if you have to be conscious that if you make a mistake while tracking, but you don't do anything and you're hesitant, once you hit the mixing stage, I couldn't make it work. We gotta go back. It's costly. So the solution is very simple. Have you tried not sucking?
Very innovative concept.
No, it is. But it's basically that, man. It's basically that. It's playing it tough and playing it hard, man, and to the wall. If you don't feel confident, let's say that you have your effects. You like what they're doing, but you don't like the sound. That's understandable. In that case, make a rough. Explain to the producer or the mixing engineer, because it's either one of them who is going to be the guy who ends up adding the effects post.
Yeah.
And chances are that it's going to be the mixing engineer, because sometimes it's better at that stage. If you are not confident with the quality of the effects you're using, or simply the idea you have in your head is not being produced as you have it in your head by the gear at your disposal, create a draft.
Yeah. Explain
yourself. Talk to your producer. Talk to your mixing engineer. And I know that I'm going a bit pro in that regard. If you don't have access to a producer or a mixing engineer, at least one of the guys involved in the project will act as the producer.
Yeah.
He has to discuss with him and look around. You got access to the freaking internet. You got channels like this. Ask me a question. I even have a channel in which I'm every week you can be by my side while I'm working. Yeah. Ask the questions. God damn it! If there was a moment in time in which you can actually be able to produce everything in your head by your own, is now.
True. That's true.
Because it's not just information. The tools for the job are super accessible.
Yeah.
Plugins are fantastic now, man. They are actually this close from replacing, but I don't use real life amplifiers in the live shows. They try to show the screen. I think if you click on the,
it's gonna be the top one, right?
The top one is the top.
Okay, so.
And look, this is not bragging. Look, I told you, the wall of amps. You don't need those anymore live, because I replaced them with a mini pedal. And does it sound? No. Does it sound good? Yes. Does guitar players care? Man, I can assure you that if you go to a show of a badass band like Animals as Leaders, you won't care if they are using a modeler, a digital amplifier regression or not, because the sound is already there, man. You would, as a guitar player, feel the difference.
The performer. You're talking about the
yeah, and that's the thing that you have to learn to compensate for. Let me check. Some bands want the recordings to sound like they do when they play live, and that's a hard thing to 100%. Man, in my experience, that has been the hardest, because think in terms of keys. They sound better live.
Yeah.
By orders of magnitude.
They are a live band.
They are a live band.
Yeah.
In the studio, they sound tiny. Why? Because they haven't been able to, in my opinion, to capture the essence. And even the numbers are there to back me up. Their most successful records have been always the live shows. You might disagree with the authenticity of the entirety of the recording and how live is Kiss alive. That's a matter of discussion. I agree, but capturing the essence of the live band actually, as a producer, is your objective. The best producers in the job in the business, let's say Bob Rock. He decided to work with Metallica after seeing them perform live, man. Because by being there, while they do their stuff, you start to get you see what makes them thick or what makes them suck. You see the good and the bad, and you allow yourself to, whenever you hit the studio, okay, dude, you do this amazingly well. How can we do it? How can we record and how can we commit to this? I used to do that when I was active here in this region, working as a producer. I always, whenever I got hired, I always first, after I realized that I wouldn't end up killing those the musicians I will be working with. Okay, when are you performing live? How soon? No, this day. Okay, I'll be there because I wanna see what's the deal with you. I already heard you in the draft recordings that I always ask for, because by showing up with already a crude recording done with your phone, already shows me if you are good or not, or ready. Good is not the right word. Ready for recording. You gotta be well rehearsed, but also you gotta have the chemistry that we discussed at the beginning of this conversation. So after watching them perform live, you try to absorb. Good point, Josh. And I that's always my objective, because I see the use of recorded music as a way to get us as close as possible, from the perspective of the listener, of course, to the experience of being there with the band while they perform live.
Yeah.
How do you do that? Because we're not talking about the music, man. You're talking about the experience, the essence, the vibe.
And I think that's even harder, or even more of a challenge when we're talking about bands that you know clearly that they shine live. You get your Kisses, your Iron Maiden bands, because you clearly see that they, when most of our Iron Maiden recordings, they're trying, but they never can fully replicate that. It's hard.
Yeah, and being there, I know that we sound like a broken record, particularly because I've been there to several concerts of Iron Maiden. Yes. Why? It's impossible to live the same experience, man. The recordings, the studio albums are unable to capture that essence. The only ones that are capable of doing it, in my opinion, are Peace of Mind, Power Slave, and Seven Son.
Powerslave is...
And also God Somewhere in Time. But that's it. Because Fear of the Dark...
No. It pales.
It's like... Because I discovered that song by listening to the live performance they got in Donington in England.
Yeah.
That's so amazing, man. And then finally I would be able to listen to it pristine audio out of the studio, right? Like
it's not, it doesn't really deliver the same.
No, it doesn't have that, man. It's ridiculous. Kind of like, what the hell happened? Don't know.
But in this case, it's kind of like reading the book before watching the movie. Like
it's watching the movie. In this case,
there are certain instances where it's not recommended because you're setting yourself up for a letdown.
Yeah, because
very honest.
The book is always better.
Yeah.
The thing is that if you watch the movie first and then you read the book, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, now I understand. Yeah. But if you read the book, my case.
Yeah.
Dune.
Oh yes.
Man, I hate this. What? That guy doesn't look like Paul Atreides. That's not shiny. Who the hell is that? Damn it!
Yeah.
You could go.
Yeah, because if you had watched it first, it might not. Well, nothing to call home about, but maybe it wouldn't be a letdown. It would be fine.
No, okay, I enjoyed it. Then you read the books. Wait a second, I get that guy. But at least you enjoy the movies.
Yeah.
In my case, I'm not going to watch the last one because I know what happens next, and this is already a train wreck. Yeah, I'm that kind of snob anyway. So take some. Well, wait, singers.
Oh we haven't touched upon them.
Yes, because it was the big cliffhanger from the beginning. Singers. I'm gonna speak like a singer first. Drink water. Not cold, not hot. Room temperature. Why? Because that's easy to replenish. Why? When you're singing, your vocals, your vocal instrument. Is capable of withstanding a good chunk of strain if worked and used correctly. First and foremost, take lessons. Please, if there is one instrument that you cannot do it without learning first how to do it, is singing. Because it's quite easy to destroy your voice in seconds. You just need a few minutes of doing it poorly for you to lose it. And it's not going to recover in a few hours, if not an entire day. Now imagine this being the case in a studio environment.
Yeah.
The recording is going on, man. And it happened to me several times here. And me not being the asshole that I might give the impression of actually being, you learn to detect the lack of experience in singers. So you start to find ways to make them feel more comfortable, because if I can tell you one thing, the most common your objective as the guy directing the acting as the producer, because you don't have to be a professional producer, okay? But if you are the bandmate that ended up being the leader of the production, one of your roles is not to bash the skull of your pals. It's actually try to keep the morale high and the temperature cool. Because if the emotions start to rise, in the negative side of things, it's going to be recorded, man. It's going to sound like that. So when it comes to singers, you have to be aware of the strain and the anxiety that comes with being in the recording studio. It's more strenuous on the vocals than it is on the drummers or the rest of the bands the band members.
Why so?
Because the singing, a singer, the voice, it's basically his own body producing the sound, man. So it's dependent on the emotional response than the rest. The rest are also affected, but in the case of mechanical instruments, it's gonna be more on the quality of the performance rather than the ability to perform. Get me?
Got you.
A singer who is lost. Man, it happens even when people have to hit the stage to say hello.
Yeah, true.
Just think about that. You have seen that, and it's not a stage fright, man.
Or on camera or anything.
It's paralysis, man. I know what happened. I lost my voice a few minutes before hitting the stage. It's not somebody who's gonna sing. Somebody like, welcome to today's. It's just that guy. So that happens.
Yeah.
And in a recorded environment, it's even more strenuous because you're gonna be judged, and you're super self-conscious as a singer, because what is gonna be judged is you, man. It's not your guitar. It's not the quality of the pickups. It's not.
Yeah.
If you suck at arranging pedals.
Yeah, there's nothing else to blame. It's only you.
It's not the drummer. The drums are not out of tune.
Yeah.
It's you simply suck, man. So, and you know it, man. It's like the microphone, and there's an ad tip of, I have never seen that in my life before. I only saw it in videos. I don't even know what it does, but it's important. I'm afraid of it. Yeah. So let me check this comment. What do you do when the musician improvises? Like the lead is never the same, or the vocal melody or intensity changes, and they can make up their mind which one they want. This is where you have to show who has the biggest stick. If you're acting as a producer, good question by the way. You should make sure that they hire you, or you are in that position, because they trust in your opinion. And they want you to share your opinion regarding whatever is going on.
Yeah.
So, in that case, you should create the environment in which your input has way more weight than the one by the musicians. But it's never the final take. Let's say that if you're trying to ponder the amount or the value of the prepositions, yours is going to be always you plus one. So yours equals 2 rather than 1. That's an easy way to measure it. Why? Because you're in that role because you're allegedly qualified. Not by look, I have a degree from music production. Well, that doesn't exist. But because you have the chops or the musical sensitivity that allows you to wait a second. And how do you develop that skill? See the bigger picture. What I do when I do the analysis, the music analysis, is basically the methodology that I use when I am producing music. Learn to separate the instruments, learn to understand their roles, what they do in the music, how they interact with certain instruments, what kind of effect, emotionally speaking, the timbre, the texture of each instrument has, that allows the music to sound correct or not. Because let's say that the composition is great, but the way that you are tracking sucks. You already have something in the way. And coming back to the question, what do you do when somebody is when you get those special artists? That's how I would like to call them. Those artistic driven people. Do compilation takes. Record several tries because they might be hitting golden, man. And don't get in the way of creativity, man. It could be that one of those takes would be the one. So now that we don't have to, we're not running out of a tape. Okay, first run, record that one. Okay, the singer said, let me try another one. I have an idea. Do it. Let me try another one. I have another idea. As many, but just be careful. Just be careful for the guy, in the case of a singer, don't get fatigued. Because repetition actually is the enemy, especially with voices. Because unlike drummers or guitar players, the mechanical fatigue is the physical fatigue is palpable, but it recovers faster, way faster than vocal strain. And once you get to a point of it's getting close to blowout, they stop. So be very, very diligent in that regard. What do you do then? Okay, let's take a break. Let's see what you got, and have a conversation, discuss with them, and you can actually. I'm thinking right now in Logic. You can actually create those comps and just select one section, combine it, make a Frankenstein take out of the different options that the musician provided. And between you and the musician, we'll decide which one is the best combination. That's how you get the best for everything. And the same applies to guitar solos. Some guitar players, I think, for example, David Gilmour, he actually created all of his guitar solos like this. Comping. But not comping in the final take. He comped the different ideas. Okay, this is the one. I like this, and then they created the Frankenstein. Then
he performed the Frankenstein.
Do it correctly. Makes sense, man. Makes total sense. And that works wonders.
Yeah.
Because first and foremost, let's say that you're doing it professionally. You're providing a service. Make sure that the client is happy, because that means they will come back, and also they will recommend you to somebody else. So that means that you can start actually a career. But if you're doing it as one of the band members, don't get yourself in trouble, because you meet those guys probably more than you meet your wife. So if you start to develop cracks in the relationship between the rest of your bandmates out of you being a prick, or they not understanding that at that point you have to be the prick-like personality.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're gonna end in a bad situation.
Yeah.
Great question, Josh. Great question. So to summarize it, show who is boss, but always be open for creativity. Because if you behave like a gatekeeper, you might lose the good one.
Yeah, actually.
That's and that applies to everybody, even drums. With drums it's a little bit harder because multi-microphones and stuff. So I prefer to do that while at pre-production rather than the actual mixing stage.
Yeah.
Because one thing that we forgot to mention, have some form of pre-production before hitting the studio. What's that? You got here what you need for pre-production. Record the track playing live, and if you have some of those in the rehearsal room, and if you have one of those sections that is still loose, not necessarily decided, record all of the different iterations here. These will allow you to layer after the rehearsal is over and everybody's having a pint. You can actually listen in an analytic mindset without distractions coming from having to perform, and allowing you to focus on the rest of the music rather than your own instrument, to come up with a much more critical conversation in between the band members. And you can discuss, because sometimes I can assure you that happened to me before. The rehearsal rooms tend to be super loud. That's why we never rehearse now. We always rehearse with in-ears. We are that kind of fancy guys. Because no, enough. And also, I need my ears to be sharp for this job. So, record yourself here. Analyze it with your bandmates, having a pint. Because I'm not joking with the pint. If you don't drink, no worries. You should. But with moderation and with care, yeah, that's different things. But the idea is to listen to those tracks. It's for you to listen to those tracks in an environment that is friendly. It's not musical driven. It's more about bonding, because you want the band to feel, we are those guys. We sound like that, and you start to develop this kind of that pride, right? A good sense of pride. So that avoids you from, because that happened here several times. This is hilarious. Look, the drummer, we recorded the drums, then the bass player, and then the guitar player shows up. Don't tell me you do that. The guitar guys didn't know what the bass player was doing. And I'm like, you don't know what the bass player does? No. I look at the drummer. Super loud, right? How do you know? Come on, man. The guitar has to be super loud because you, the drummer, are banging, and the bass player is lost in the mix. So the poor guy was playing randomly, basically. So, of course, that meant we gotta go back. We had to redo the whole, but that was on them. In that case, I didn't lose money, but I had to be nice. Like, okay, guys, if you commit, I'm not gonna charge you. But do it. You come here, super rehearsed. You got 2 hours to fix these mistakes. Because we had, I actually kind of preempted. And I saw something similar coming, and I recorded everything DI. So I was reamping. That allowed me to. It was an easy fix, man. But that's why you need to do this. This exercise is incredibly important, for real. It's cheap. You already have it. And also, don't you guys have phones? He's just saying, I was in a band. I recorded, and the singer always accused me of bringing the voices down and the lead guitar up. That's the thing, man. If that happened during the rehearsal, I'm gonna pretend or I'm gonna assume that what you mentioned just happened in a rehearsal, or in the rehearsals. That's another trick that I learned to show to the bands I worked with. Learn to position your amplifiers in your room, because that actually is your mixer.
Yeah, in that regard.
Because and also your monitor mix. Let's say you're a guitar player. Stand close enough to your amp, so that way it's going to be the loudest signal coming through, and try to be as far away from the drummer as possible. I know that a rehearsal room is tough. I have rehearsing in tiny rooms as big as this one, and this one is not a big room. It's big enough, but it's not big. It's far from being a big room. It's just perfect for what I do here. But you learn how to position stuff, man. So try to get close to your amplifier if you're a guitar player, and the singers. Those guys are the ones who have the roughest. Because I can see why the singer was kind of upset, man. For whatever reason, psychologically speaking, as a singer, if you don't hear yourself, if your monitor is not set correctly, you start to put more emphasis on your voice. You overwork it wrongly. That's a stupid thing to do, but that happens, man. And you start to feel it. It's your fault that I suck. So I fail him. Not necessarily condone it, because the fix is easy. Get close to the freaking PA, damn it. But the problem with the singer is this: feedback. So it's not that easy. So my recommendation in live shows: drummer, check, vocals, and the rest of the event is built around the vocals. Why? Because you need to be sure that if you push everything already loud and you leave the vocals last, headroom. So oh shit, I can't push it louder. So that's why you usually, when you're doing sound check, you will have the guy boom check on everybody, then rough mix, vocals. Okay, I'm gonna use kind of this level for the rest of the band, and then fine tune. Recommended 100%. And in recording environment, you get the benefit of actually having monitors here controlled. So yeah, those would be a good chunk of piece of advice. I think we went a little bit more overboard than I expected.
Quite a lot of ground.
Sorry with the gear showcase, but I think it was important for it to make a point. And just actually, I know you're a guitar player. This kind of thing of going DI live is way less expensive than you think. Believe me. These boards, this is labor of years. Okay, I'm not gonna tell you that it's just go there and go to Guitar Center and come up with something like that. But you're gonna start off with a foundational piece. In my case, I would recommend you look at Tonex, because the Tonex Mini, I think, is $150, and it sounds the same as the big one. It's very good, and this guy can tell you, does it sound good?
It sounds very good.
Insane, right? And I actually have a video on which I show the use of the mini board as a reamping device, tracking through that guy.
Not that you were doing that a few minutes ago.
No, of course not. No, I actually didn't use Tonex for that one, but it's basically that, but replacing the amplifiers with Tonex alone, just to show how good it sounds now. So yeah, modelers are in a completely different league than they used to be back in the day, because I actually began with my old Boss GT8, for those of you who are those troopers. It's an old unit from 2005 or 7, I think. I got it kind of that period, and it's still rocking. I'm planning to make a video out of it. Just is it still relevant? They're like, oh yeah.
The competition is kind of fierce now.
Yeah, but you'll see how good it sounds, man. The thing is that the competition is so fierce now that it starts to show its old nature. Okay.
Yeah, the shortcomings.
The shortcomings are there, but it's possible. So I recommend you to truly take a look at Tonex. It's very good. So do you have any extra recommendation?
No, I think we covered quite a lot of ground already.
Yeah. One final thing to say?
Yes, just that I think it's very common for musicians to not be concerned about the dynamics of the studio or recording before they are actually given the opportunity to do it. And I think that's a big mistake, because I think if you're taking music seriously, eventually you're gonna hit the recording studio.
It's a fact.
It's gonna happen.
Even as a hobbyist, man.
So yeah, no, but seriously, doesn't even need to see big career. If you're taking music seriously to any regard, you're gonna hit the recording studio eventually. So why not prepare for it? Why only live to deal with it once the time comes?
Yeah.
So I think that's the basically the general overview, or the main piece of advice is simply, since you know that's gonna happen, prepare for it.
Yeah, put some eggs on it.
Yeah, look, you can get you listen to the live stream once again. Yes. See the scattered pieces of advice that was given here, and okay, why don't I work a little bit on getting the proper tone of my drum kit, or why don't I work a little bit on learning how to set the gain for my guitar correctly for a change. So, and that way, whenever the situation presents itself that you're gonna have to hit the studio, you're gonna be ready for it.
You're ready, or at least it's not gonna take you with your get you with your pants down.
Yeah, and you're gonna be able to deliver something worthwhile.
And if my final comment would be, it's like a story, something that happened to me here in the studio. It's the first band that I actually produced. I was a total noob. I had little to no experience. I only had my experience by effing up my own stuff, and I actually spent a few years learning the craft, learning from different people, before I actually began doing it professionally, of course. And this is the first band that actually I got professionally hired to work with. Good band. They recorded an EP. And they disbanded like two days after the release of the EP. So yeah, actually they were a good band. They were kind of very similar, very influenced by Guns N' Roses, but with a twist. It was good, man. And one of the things that I asked them, because I always like to do the psychological thing first before we even pick up any instrument. I always have a good conversation with the bands or the musicians. What's your goal? And look, everything goes. Because if you are telling me that this is the first step into becoming Guns N' Roses, I'm on it. I get you, and I'm there for you. I'm here to help. One of them, the first one to answer, because everyone like, I don't know, I never stopped to think about it. Like that, Rumble C, kinda. The first one to step in was the singer. Said, I just want to show it to my dad. I want to show him what we're doing. I think he's gonna like it. Like, damn! I look at the rest like this guy.
This guy knows.
This guy knows.
Yeah.
Because regardless of success happening or not, it's not about that. He wanted to share with his dad what he loves so much, man. Yeah. In a way that actually exposed in its fullest, or the closest to its fullest, his vision.
Yeah.
Like, damn! So don't look at the recording environment or the recording studio just as the step forward into world domination or being renowned worldwide. It could be a statement, a personal thing. It could be something that it's only for you.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to.
Value,
a friend of ours. It's a surprise, but nobody who knows us watches this, so I don't care. His dream is to do the DJ stuff, but he's a lawyer, and he's already in his 50s. So I convinced him to get himself a deck. He did, and I actually produced a few tracks with him, fully from the beginning to the end, from zero to hero. And why he wanted to, because he wanted to have the experience. He feels that he is that thing, man.
Yeah, he loves it.
He loves it, man. Yeah. And every time we meet him, so blast, man.
Yeah.
Because he enjoys that so much, man. And as you can see, here in the studio is not exclusive for those who are in pursuit of a professional path, or to follow a professional path in this dangerous business. I don't have anything more to say that this is not tough. This is awful.
It's catchy.
Yeah, if I could avoid it, I would have think twice about doing what I do now. Except the thing is, I'm so into it now that damn.
Too late,
pal. Yeah. So, but yeah. So look at it from that perspective. Everybody has a reason for doing what they do, and for as long as you have one, you're okay.
Yeah.
So pursue it. Don't shy away. Another thing, not me plugging any form of mixing services or anything, but avoid being cheap, because in this situation, you more often than not will pay. You will get what you pay for. You truly need to be conscious of your budget, and depending what you're aiming to do, you will have to spend in a court. I'm not telling you that you have to hire, Tony Maserati or one of those bad boys in order to produce a record, because that's gonna be very expensive, and not expensive in the sense of it being unobtainium. It's just that it could be a very, very, very tough spot to put yourself in, because it might derail you from many things, financially speaking.
Yeah.
So, but try to. There are many people who are good that doesn't have the renown, because what you will partially get. I'm not trying to point fingers or anything. You're also buying the prestige, which has its place.
Yeah.
Its value is very important. But get me right. That means that you should also be aware of where you are at that point in your career. Because right now everybody loves Joey Sturgis, because that guy created the modern tone of sound of metal. I for one don't like it, but it's the tone, it's the sound, the whole thing with hyper doctoring drums and super tight, precise sounding guitars and everything, high gain, blah blah blah. Of Mice and Men, all of those bands, he's the producer for those guys.
Yeah.
He started off as a nobody, man. Why? Because those guys, the bands that worked with him at the beginning, found that he was good. It's cheap. Let's use it before it goes. No, it goes everywhere, man.
Yeah.
And now it's gonna be tough. So you could be dealing with a great guy.
Yeah.
So be mindful of that. So thanks.
All right, so girls and boys, we have conversations like this on a weekly basis. So if you don't want to miss the next one,
don't want to miss a thing.
You don't want to miss a thing. I invite you to subscribe to your channel if you're not subscribed yet. Why wouldn't you?
Yeah, sure.
And
what's wrong with you?
What's wrong with you? You should ring the bell, because like that you will get notification when we do this kind of stuff.
And subscribing means nothing.
Subscribing, it seems like YouTube does nothing with a subscription. You need to ring the bell so you can get notified. That if you want to support these efforts and well, join us in this journey, you can listen to our music on Apple Music or Spotify, and also listen to our music on Apple Music or Spotify, and also follow us on other social media such as Instagram and X, and also join the conversation that we keep on running on Discord.
Yes.
Because here is just one place that we have conversations, but Discord is where we keep it going.
Yes.
So join us there as well.
Yes.
Anything else to be said?
No, with that being said, the only thing to remind is that you should never let anybody tell you what to dream about. And just, I will check the files that you already sent tonight. Tomorrow I'm going to get in touch with you through email, okay?
Yeah.
With that being said, we'll see you when we see you.